Okay, it's Friday. Nice day. Hopefully you have some fun weekend plans that involve studying a lot. No, I have to do more correcting, so I'll be grading this weekend. Uh, Today's a normal kind of Friday. We're gonna look a little bit, a sneak peek at the assignment that's due on Sunday night. And then we're gonna look at the review activities, give you some time if you want to work on the BuzzFeed quiz if you didn't finish that up here. We are gonna have to cover a little bit more material today. I usually don't like to cover new material on Friday. It's usually a review day, but well, I'll explain it in just a sec. Um, so again, Wednesday, those of you who are here on Wednesday and weren't sleeping on Wednesday, we did the BuzzFeed quiz there. And remember, that's due again Sunday night. You want to post your code and then also take a look at two other people's code and either just run that and try it out there, or else take their code and ask AI. And I should update that because this is old. I said Bard. I don't think Bard is even around anymore. I should be saying like Gemini. For that. I don't know if I should say Gemini because Gemini, I think, is still the college is supposed to be opening it up to students, to everyone on campus, but I think right now it is still blocked with your Gmail account. Yeah, that should be fixed soon this semester. But if you have another Gmail account, I'm just logged in as my CSS account, so it doesn't like that because the college has some blocks in place. Also, organizations like the college have to pay, where if you have a personal Gmail account, you get Gemini for free for that. So that's one of the reasons. Okay, so yeah, you can try out, do the BuzzFeed quiz. Then the other thing is the assignment, and you have two options there. I try to do options often that let you choose some different things that might interest you. And so I'm sorry, I think both these are kind of boring, but that's what we have. One is to calculate shipping rates. I have a friend we've been helping out this summer. She's been trying to clear out her house. And so her house, she's been out, she comes from a family that traveled the world. And so her house is full of all sorts of weird stuff. And so we've been selling a fair amount on eBay. So I've been learning a lot more about how to ship really strange things on eBay, like pool cues and stuff like that. Here, I didn't know there were like designer pool cues at the beginning of the summer, but now I'm aware of that. And then you have to ship them a certain way. So I also didn't know that you can't sell stuff from Iran in the United States over eBay. So that's eBay doesn't like that, which because of the embargo. So I've learned that too over the summer. So the shipping rate one, that I tried to make that sound really exciting. Didn't that sound really exciting? I go, I want to do the shipping rate one. That sounds like a really fun, exciting topic. A professor almost got arrested for that. The other one is tuition and fees there. Yeah, and I think everyone's interested in tuition and fees. So you have to do one of those options. Now, the problem is on those assignments, if you go there, there are requirements that you print it off in a certain format here. Like with a comma in it or with two decimal places or something like that. And I tell you some ways of doing it, but we haven't talked about that. So that's what we're going to do now, is talk a little bit about formatting here. The other thing we're going to do today is look at some of the practice problems. And in those, like the Magic 8-Ball one, we look at random numbers. So again, we're going to talk about that. So that is what I kind of forgot to cover on Wednesday. I was wondering why I thought there should be more. So on Wednesday, I should have covered this. So in learning material for Unit 4, we did the switch statement, we did the and or, we talked about string comparisons. So we've done all of that. And hopefully you've seen that a couple of times now. Let's talk about random numbers here. and how to do random numbers for this. Um, the computer can't really do true random numbers. And the computers are very deterministic, but computers are pretty good at just doing faking it with random numbers. And so we call them pseudo random numbers. We often use the time, what the current time is, and use that to help in an equation that generates random numbers so that if you run it and then you run it a second later, it'll be at a different time and you'll get a different set of random numbers. Basically, random numbers are a set of mathematical equations that generate a sequence of numbers, and you just have to jump somewhere in that sequence of numbers. And they seem very random, but they're always in the same order because of the math involved. And so they're pseudo-random numbers. Just saw a social media post about someone trying to get the perfect Tetris game. And it was all about him memorizing and timing down to the second the Tetris scores so he could beat the random number generator in Tetris. Crazy. So how do we do this? So this talks about filling a random number with arrays, but again, we need to create a random number generator. So we declare this random, here random, and new random number generator. You'll see this sometimes in computing. This first word, random with a capital R, is the name of this class. And then this is what variable we're using. We're naming this here for this. And we can choose any name we want for this, but often coders who are very creative will name it the same as this class. So we need a random number generator. We're going to call it random. Okay, so the difference is that the name of the class is a capital R. The name of our variable is a lowercase r. So now from now on, we'll be calling it random here. So it would be kind of like saying that, okay, we have this whole family of Gibbons out there. And what are we going to call? We need to make a new Gibbons. What are we going to call it? And we're going to call this new Gibbon there. But we'll put it in lowercase, kind of like that. So we just created a new Gibbon named Gibbon, basically. And then we use that. We say random.next int. So there's a couple of ways of doing it, but one we can do is to specify an integer, and it'll give us an integer between 0 and less than this number for this. Here. Okay, so let's look at some code for that. So here's some sample code. We're creating a random number generator. We're naming it random again, so we have that. And now we're generating different things. Like here, random.next integer is a random integer between 0 and 99 inclusive. So again, less than 100, because that's our limit. So it could be 0, it could be in any number between that and 99. Yeah. So if we want to generate, like, let's say you're going to roll a dice, a 10-sided die, we would do a random integer up to 10, but that would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then we'd add 1 to it. And that'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There. So now sometimes you want a decimal number. So there is a random.next double, which will give you a decimal number between 0 and 1, guaranteed to be less than 1 there. So something between those values. This is my preferred way of generating random numbers. There is an older way here with math.random. Here, you have to say a random number generator, and then you can create, and it always gives you a random number between 0 and 1, a decimal, and then you have to do things with it. You can't just get an integer for that. And then there's things you have to do as far as casting and stuff. So I prefer, again, the way the book shows, or that one link with the random, this sort of stuff where you declare a random generator and then use that with like next int. Okay. Questions on random numbers? Random numbers are kind of fun because now we can start doing kind of more creative things with some of our examples and things like that. So it's surprising how often random numbers come in handy. Okay, let's just talk about formatting our output here. I think I'm just going to show you these options rather than showing the textbook stuff here. So let's say we have a cost and it's a double and it has all these decimal places here. And we want to just display it in different ways. Let's try that out. So I'm going to run NetBeans and try out this code here and look at different ways of doing this. I think I'm going to run NetBeans. So kind of with random here, there are 3 different ways of formatting numbers here. And you can kind of pick your best. Printf is the oldest, and if you talk, so people like me who are old, printf it has been around forever, and we're just used to using printf. But I don't think it's necessarily the easiest way to do things here. So I'm going to just go into my Unit 4 sandbox here that I had. Okay, we're going to paste in that. And let's do some printouts here with printfs. Clean that up a little bit and see what that does. So with printf, it's again similar to our print line, system.out.print. F is for formatting. And what you do is you specify a string that will format your output here. So here we say like the decimal cost with 0 decimals is, and then we put in a %. This is a mask that the number will be printed out in here. And then this is a new line. If I want to go to the new line, like a print line, I put in this %n here. And then I put my variable. So you can list multiple variables. The first variable, look for the first mask here, or spot to put a variable with a % and what formatting is. So it'll put that variable and format it this way in the output. So what we'll see is the decimal cost with 0 decimals is, and it'll just print off 1122. So again, it's decimal. F is for a floating point number, and then the 0.0 means no decimal places. If we want 2 decimal places, we'd say 0.2F. So percent 0.2F. Now, if we want commas in it, like here, this would be percent comma 0.2F. So that's include commas in the output and have 2 decimal places here for this. So that'll print off here. Now, if I change this, I can print out the same variable, but let's say I just do 3F and run it. Now it's going to print it off with 3 decimal places here instead of 2. Or if I don't want commas, I would get rid of the comma, and now it'll print it off with 2 decimal places, but without a comma here. So you can do different formattings with that. Let's try another way, and that is to use printf, but use our special string.format command here. So let's look at those examples. I'm going to, I will mention that we were talking about floating point numbers. You can specify decimals, and you can specify, like, do you want to include commas? You can also say how many how many spaces you want this to take. So if you're formatting a nice table, you can do some nice formatting with this here. So, okay, let's try to do some string dot format. Works kind of the same. We can use that with a print line where we can print off a string and then we're going to add on. And then like normally we'd just say print this, how print this out and then just print off the cost. Here we just say cost to print off the cost. Print off this string plus this cost. But whenever you're printing off a variable, you can stick a string dot format around it. So we're saying string dot format, and here's our format string, and here's our variable cost. And there's just a comma between the two. And again, we can specify different formats for this. There's a lot of different formats. These are just some of the basic ones you might use here. So, the other thing is there are some special decimal format ones here where you can create a decimal formatter for this that formats it a special way, and then you use that special formatter to do things. AI sometimes uses this, so I put it in here. I think it's way too complicated. Unless you're always using some weird format and you're always using it, you can create a formatter just for that specific format. But here, I mean, you have to have a separate formatter variable for each way you want to format things. So I don't like to use decimal formats here. Now you might be asking, well, what do you teach in your advanced classes? We actually don't generally use any of these because often like when we're creating mobile apps, we need to be able to, when we're printing out a currency, a dollar amount, it could be in a foreign currency like euro or anything like that. And so there's actually special libraries that handle and print it out in the location you're with. Because again, these are commas. So well, I don't know if all of you in the United States, we have commas. So when we print like a decimal number out, we would print out like a dollar sign and then a comma in the thousands and a decimal point before we get into like the cents here or the decimal for that. But now a lot of countries have other formats here. So you might have a comma here and not a period or things like that. So there are different formats for these, for what, and so again, if you're doing this for an app that's being, shown in lots of different countries, you can't just use this basic stuff. There are libraries that'll format it localized to wherever you're at. So, okay. Questions on this? Let's try out a random number generator. I'm going to go, and again, you can do whatever review. I'm going to do a practice problem here. I'm going to click on this, open up the practice problems, and work on one of these practice problems for this. A lot of these are trying to pick out different things. I'm going to do this Magic 8 Ball because I grew up in the era where Magic 8 Balls were very cool. It's hard to describe what a Magic 8 Ball is, and if you haven't seen it, but it looks like a Magic 8 Ball there, and it's filled with liquid, and there's a little window that would display stuff, and you would mix it up, and there would be a die inside, and you'd turn it over, and the die would float to the top, and it would display one of 6 different messages because it was a 6-sided die in here. And you'd ask it a question. It was the Ouija board of my generation there. So it would say, ask it, am I going to win the lottery? And it would say, as I see it, yes, or don't count on it, or my sources say no. I would say things like that there. So you'd ask it these critical questions in your life, and it would predict the right answer. Yeah, so there was a ball. Again, the ball was filled with a fluid, kind of a viscous fluid, and there was a die floating in there with those words written on the different sides of the die. So you'd kind of mix up the ball and then you'd hold up. And then nowadays they're all electronic. That's no fun. But we would watch, and you'd watch the die slowly go through this fluid and kind of appear, because the fluid was murky, and the die would come up and it would tell you, one of the answers would show up on the little window into the magic 8 ball. So we obviously have to do that because that's so cool. So let's do, I mean, you can do whatever review problem you want. I'm just going to do the magic 8 ball. So new project, unit 4, magic 8 ball. We're going to ask the user to think of a yes or no question to ask the magic 8 ball. And we're going to read that in, and we don't actually need this input, so I'm just still going to read it in. So we're going to say, set up a little bit. What important question do you have for the magic ball? And then I'm going to do enter a yes, no question. I'm going to read that in string question equals. I'm getting very lazy because in my other, like my advanced programming class, we have an AI enabled on our editor. So I can just start typing string dot question equals, and it would fill in. It is really good at reading my mind and guessing what I'm trying to do there. So I'm just waiting for it to fill in the rest of it. And I go, oh, I have to type in this whole line. So okay. So I'm gonna need an input here. Scanner input equals new scanner system.in. And then I want to do input dot next line. I have to import this. There. Now I have to import it there. Okay. Next line. There we go. Okay, that's better. So I'm going to read in that question, and then I'm going to generate a random number here. So generate a random number. I need a random number generator, random. Oh, I'm going to call it a different thing. I'm going to call this, rather than calling it random like I always do, I'm going to call it 8 ball. How about here? Those new random. I'm going to import that. And then I'm going to say, I'm going to have my integer, my number equals, I'm going to ask my 8 ball. next int, and I'm gonna ask it up to 6. There's 6 possible answers for that. And now based on that, I'm gonna say different things. If the first thing is that the number could be 0. If it's equal to 0, I'm going to print out what is the first thing? It is certain, or very certain there. Okay, I'm going to print off that. And then I'm going to do else if the number is 1. I'm going to say what as I see it, yes. So not as confident. Duplicate this. And switch this inside of it. Okay. Now I have my pattern, my else ifs. I have to do a bunch of these else ifs. I'm just going to copy this and do a bunch of these else ifs. Okay, so 0, I do this 1. The next one would be a 2. The next one would be a 3. Next one would be a 4. Next one would be a 5. But 1 to 5 would be the last one. So I'm just going to say else. If it's not 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, again, because although I said a 6, it's going to give me a number 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, an integer less than 6. So I'm going to check out those. And then I'm just going to put in my different things, ask again later. So if it's a 2, I do that. If it's a 3, I do say don't count on it. If it's 5, it's a no. And if it's a 6, it's just very doubtful. Now, if I wanted to actually generate a number between 1 and 6, I could say next int plus 1. And that'll generate a number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, well, between 1 and 6. But I didn't. I just said next int, and so it's 0 through 5 here. So now I can try this out here. I can run this, enter an important question. So, will I win the lottery? And then it does one of these answers here. And if I run it again, it should do a different answer. Will I win? So should just print off one of these answers here. Now, you're thinking, Tom, that's an awful lot of if else. Shouldn't you be switching that to a case statement? And I said, I don't like switch statements. I don't like them. But it underlines it in orange. I don't like things underlined in orange either. So I'm here. So I think I could do that. I could convert this to a switch statement easy enough. So I'm just going to do that. And again, it's going to actually do that for me. Switch on all of our cases here, and then our default case we'll look out here. Now I could do cases 1 to 5, and in the default, if something goes wrong, I could say something went wrong or something like that. So I could, another way of doing this would be to do all the cases. And then down here, I could say something went wrong. It should never get to the default case. It should always get to one of these, but I can do that. questions on this? So feel free to go through. There's some neat examples here for different things. I think I'm just gonna, I haven't done the batting average one ever, so I think I'm gonna go do the, I wrote the batting average one, but I didn't actually do it, so I want to probably do that here. But why don't you figure out which one you want to do? I'm gonna stop talking. And again, you can work if you haven't finished your BuzzFeed quiz, finish that up and do, if you haven't done your posts, do that. And then again, pick one of the exciting assignments to turn in before Sunday. So, all right. just going to break in and talk just a little bit about AI and how you can use this. Again, one thing I find useful sometimes is to ask AI to help with some of these sample problems. What I often like to do is take one of these practice problems, try to do it, see how far I get, and then ask AI and compare my results to AI's results here to see how close they are. So again, I did this batting average one. And so I created a scanner, said let's calculate batting average, input stuff, and then I declared a string and have them enter, did you get at your first at bat, did you get a hit? Yes, no, and read that into a string, asked them a second one, third one, and then I then checked if their first bat, if they had it equals ignore case, if that was a yes, I wanted to keep track of it. So I declared a variable called hits, an integer, and I set it to 0. And then if this was true, I added 1 to hits. If this was, and I checked the second one, and if that was true, I added another 1 to hits. And if the third one was yes, I added another 1 to hits. So if they answered yes all 3 times, hits would be 3. Here, if they only answered it, so many times, it would be less than, whatever. And then I calculated the average. I declared a double variable, and that was just the hits divided by 3 here. So then I want to see, and I printed that out here. I actually did a bonus challenge where I wanted to print it off rather than 0.34. I wanted to print it off 345. So I actually multiplied it by 1,000 before I printed it off. But then I asked AI to do that. So again, I said, I'm a beginning Java programmer. I want some help with a practice problem, and you write simple Java code. So again, I'm trying to remind it not to write complicated code because we don't know very much. There's lots of stuff. If you're a little more complicated, you probably do this differently. So then I just pasted the problem in here, and here's the results here. And then I can walk through this here. Now, I could ask it, if I don't understand this, I can say, can you walk me through this code? And it will, go line by line showing you each code, but I don't need to do that. I'm just going to compare. So again, they declared their scanner. I had a scanner. That looks good. I was right on with AI there. You take this up there. They declared their variables, one for hits and one for at-bats here. I just used 3 as a constant here. I didn't have a variable, but I had a variable and I called it hits too. So that's very similar. Then they said, did you get a hit on your first at-bat? Yes, no. And read that in. They called it first. I called mine bat 1, but similar next, input dot next line. They did their if right after that. I asked all my inputs and did all my ifs together. So that's a little different. But again, that's just copying, pasting this in a different order. But again, if first dot equals ignore case is yes, then hits. Now they did this plus plus. I did basically the same thing, but I said hits equals hits plus 1. And again, plus plus is just a shortcut that since this is so commonly done, you can just shortcut this as plus plus here if you want. But I like the way I did it. And again, they did the second bat and the third bat. So that's this and this stuff here. And then they calculate the average, double average. They use, I named mine AVE. They named theirs AVG here. Now, this is where we have to watch a little bit with integer division. So they're taking the hits divided by the bats, and we want to watch that these aren't both integers. So they cast this as a double. There's a special way if things are in one type and you want to try to force it in another type. There's something called casting, where you can put the type in parentheses and force it into a type. I took the hits and divided by, rather than dividing by 3, I divided by 3.0, which I know is a decimal. So then that'll make this division a decimal number there. So that's how I solved this problem. But that's a common problem where in here, if you divide two integers by each other, it's going to do integer division, not decimal division. So that's a thing you have to watch here. But again, and then they printed off the results. They used a printf. I used a print line with a string format. So again, very similar way, but I mean, slightly different there. They use this formatting here. They did input close. Like I mentioned last time, AI likes to close things. We never close things. We don't have to do that. So I don't do that. So again, sometimes I think it's helpful. And I also think it's helpful then if there's something you don't understand, have it walk through it. Sometimes it's good to say, can you simplify this? I'm only beginning to code and see if it can make a simpler version of this for you. So like one thing would be like, I don't understand the plus plus. Can you write this without that? So I don't understand the plus plus. Can you rewrite this? We do this without that, and also tell me what plus does. So again, it'll explain it and then it'll generate a new version. And this is actually the version that's almost exactly like I wrote it. So, all right. I'll stop talking again. Not that you were listening.